There are artists who leave after the lights have gone out. There are those who are forced to leave because the audience has forgotten their names. But there is another kind of departure, quieter, harder to understand, when everything is still at its peak. Ritchie Blackmore belongs to that kind of person. He did not disappear because he lacked talent. He did not leave the stage because he ran out of ideas, and certainly not because the world of rock no longer needed him. When the name Blackmore had already become part of the very structure of modern hard rock, when the riffs he created still echoed like a declaration for an entire generation, he chose to step out of the circle of light. In an industry that glorifies repetition and feeds on nostalgia, leaving while the legend remains intact is almost an act that goes against the instinct of survival. But Blackmore has never operated according to the instincts of the crowd. He loves structure, loves precision, loves absolute control over the sound he creates. And when the music no longer belonged solely to him, when it became a machine that had to be maintained, he began to feel that he no longer belonged to it. In a period when Deep Purple was still a global icon, amid tours packed with audiences and a status no one could deny, Blackmore left. Not loudly, not with lengthy explanations. He simply did not continue. Perhaps the hardest thing for a genius is not creating a legend, it is knowing when to leave it. And the real question is not what happened to Ritchie Blackmore, but why someone who could remain at the top would choose not to do so. This is not a story of decline. This is a story of a choice. The choice not to become a museum of oneself. If 1970s rock was a building being erected with speed and energy, then Ritchie Blackmore was not merely someone standing inside it. He was the architect drawing the blueprint. In the Mark II lineup of Deep Purple, Blackmore did not simply play guitar. He shaped the way the band stood upright within sonic space. His riffs did not drift on spontaneous blues instinct like many guitarists of his era. They were constructed with an axis of symmetry, with internal logic, with the sense that each note had been placed in the correct position before it was played. Smoke on the Water is not just a memorable riff. It is a minimalist yet solid structure, almost industrial in its architecture, straight, concise, without excess. Highway Star, on the other hand, carries a classical momentum, just where the guitar solo is no longer an exhibition of instinct, but resembles a miniature concerto. There, Blackmore was not trying to prove that he could play faster. He was proving that the guitar could think. The greatest difference lay in mindset. For Blackmore, the guitar was not a highlighted element over the music. It was the pillar, the backbone, the load-bearing frame of the entire song. When he wrote a riff, he was not merely creating a melody. He was creating a space in which the other members could exist. Hard rock before Blackmore carried much instinct and blues. After Blackmore, it began to carry structure, a European sensibility, classical influences that few in the mainstream rock world of that time truly cared about. And it is here that the paradox begins to form. Six, a man who helped define the shape of modern hard rock, was also the one who soon felt uncomfortable standing still within the very structure he had created. When the sound became a brand, when the formula became expectation, when the audience wanted to hear what was familiar again. Blackmore did not hate success, but he did not want to be trapped inside his own construction. Genius sometimes lies not only in the ability to build, but also in the sensitivity to realize that the structure is beginning to enclose oneself. There is a paradox within every great band. When success reaches a global scale, music is no longer just art. It becomes a system, a schedule, contracts, expectations. And it is precisely at that point that extreme personalities begin to collide. For Ritchie Blackmore, collision was not an event. It was a permanent state. He was not the kind of artist who lived on collective energy. He did not seek harmony. While many members of Deep Purple developed a spirit of improvisation, jam sessions, on-stage exchanges, Blackmore wanted to control the direction of the music before it even began. For him, the structure had to be established. The direction had to be clear. The space had to belong to the one shaping it. This difference initially created creativity. But as the band grew more famous, every decision was no longer just artistic. It was a commercial strategy. And at that point, the majority began to carry weight. Blackmore could not endure that. He was not used to voting on a riff, not used to compromising to satisfy the American market, not used to adjusting a solo because it was too complex for radio. Each small concession to others might have been flexibility. To Blackmore, it was an erosion of control. His personality made everything even more difficult. He could be cold to the point of cruelty. He could remain silent all day in the studio and then suddenly demand that everything be recorded again. He could refuse communication if he felt he was not being heard. No diplomacy, no softening, no attempt to be agreeable. But behind that unpleasantness was a very clear logic. Blackmore did not see himself as part of a machine. He saw himself as the one who designed it. And when the machine began to operate without consulting the designer, the feeling of being replaced began to appear, even though in reality, he was still the musical soul. This is the crucial point to understand. Blackmore did not leave because he hated his bandmates. Not because of personal resentment, not because he could not tolerate surface-level conflicts. He left because he could not tolerate his music being negotiated. For many artists, the collective is strength. For Blackmore, the collective was limitation. And when a genius feels he no longer holds full authority over the sound he himself gave birth to, dissatisfaction does not manifest as shouting. It manifests as distance, as coldness, as standing on stage but no longer truly being in it. Blackmore's genius lay in his ability to build structure. His misfortune lay in the fact that the structure was no longer entirely his. And when someone has never truly felt that he belongs, leaving is sometimes not an act of rebellion. It is simply the only way to preserve the part of oneself that remains intact. The peak of a band usually has a very clear sound. It is the roar of tens of thousands of people. It is an open-air stage like California Jam in 1974, where a sea of people stretches all the way to the horizon. It is albums like Burn that continue to maintain Deep Purple's position among the most powerful ranks of world rock. At that moment, there were no signs of decline, no sales crisis, no fading into obscurity. Deep Purple was still a global icon, and the name Ritchie Blackmore was still mentioned as one of the guitarists who defined an entire era. But within that structure, another feeling was growing. Success carries expectation. Expectation carries formula. And formula to Blackmore was the most dangerous thing of all. After Machine Head, after Smoke on the Water, after his sound had become a template, and everything began to take on its own momentum. The band was no longer merely a creative group. They were a brand. Each album had to preserve its identity. Each tour had to guarantee familiar energy. Each performance was a reenactment of a legend. The problem was this: Blackmore never wanted to reenact himself. In the studio, arguments about musical direction grew more tense. He wanted minimalism. He wanted restructuring. He wanted to control the trajectory of each song. Meanwhile, the rest of the band gradually opened themselves to elements of funk, soul, extended jams, things that made Blackmore feel the sound was slipping from his grasp. It was not about who was right. It was that Blackmore would not accept having to share core decision-making power. Leaving at this point was not an emotional reaction. It was a principled act, and staying meant continuing as the center of a massive machine, but accepting that the machine was no longer entirely under his control. And this is what few dare to do: leave while still at the top. The entertainment industry is built on survival instinct. When the brand is still strong, people keep it. When audiences still want to listen, people continue to play. When history stands on your side, you capitalize on it. Blackmore did the opposite. He saw his own future in Deep Purple, a guitarist repeating riffs that had become iconic, night after night, in exchange for the safety of legend. And he did not want to live in that role. If you are the one who created the machine, would you accept becoming a cog within it? Blackmore answered with action. He stepped out of the band when everything was still at its brightest. Not because he was removed, not because he was forgotten, but because he did not want to wait for the day he would become the curator of his own past. That was the first departure. Not loud like a dramatic breakup, but clear enough to prove one thing. For Blackmore, remaining at the peak was less important than retaining the authority to leave it. When he left Deep Purple, Ritchie Blackmore did not look for another band to join. He did not want to become part of a pre-existing system. He wanted to create a new system, one in which every axis revolved around him. That was how Rainbow was born. From the beginning, Rainbow was not designed as a Deep Purple 2.0. There was no attempt to recreate the old sound, no intention of maintaining a familiar brand. Blackmore deliberately turned in a different direction, more European, more classical, more mythical. His collaboration with Ronnie James Dio created an entirely different atmosphere. If Deep Purple was industrial and direct, Rainbow was epic in tone. Songs like Stargazer were not just rock. They resembled miniature sagas. Blackmore's guitar was no longer merely a structural pillar. It became a storytelling instrument. Harmonic minor scales, melodic passages evoking Baroque and Renaissance sensibilities, made Rainbow feel like a world separate from the traditional Anglo-American blues rock current of that era. Here, Blackmore was able to do what he had always wanted: direct the entire sonic universe. He changed lineups constantly. Members came and went if they no longer fit the vision. Rainbow did not operate as a democratic collective. It functioned as a domain, and Blackmore held the key. It was the dream of absolute control. No more voting. No more lengthy negotiations. No more feeling that the music was slipping from his grasp. But within that space of freedom, another paradox gradually emerged. When all decisions rest in one person's hands, creative friction diminishes. There is no longer a strong counterweight. See no more tensions capable of pushing the music into unexpected directions. The structure Blackmore loved began to repeat along a familiar trajectory: epic, fantasy, classical solo, dramatic climax. At first, it was identity. Later, it became a fixed style, and eventually, it risked becoming a formula. Blackmore had left Deep Purple because he did not want to repeat a formula. But Rainbow, though his own kingdom, was not immune to that rule. When audiences began to expect the rainbow sound, when the American market demanded more accessible songs, when commercial elements gradually crept in, Blackmore once again faced a familiar choice: adjust to maintain success, or change to preserve himself. Rainbow in later years shifted toward a more melodic, more radio-friendly direction. This brought commercial success, but it also blurred the darker, classical, mythical core that Blackmore had once placed at the center. And there, the old feeling returned. Not because others were controlling him, but because his own kingdom was entering a stable orbit. For many artists, stability is the goal. For Blackmore, stability is a warning signal. Rainbow proved that he could build a world according to his will. But it also proved that even that world, once it begins to operate too smoothly, can become a subtle kind of prison. The problem was never success. The problem was repetition. And Blackmore, the man obsessed with structure, once again felt that the structure was slowly closing in around him. By the mid-1990s, what few believed possible had happened. Ritchie Blackmore did not just leave a band. He left rock altogether. No grand declaration, no dramatic press conference, no cryptic farewell. He simply did not return to the old road. In 1997, together with Candace Knight, he formed Blackmore's Night. And for many fans, it was a genuine shock. No Marshall stacks, no blazing Stratocaster, no 10-minute solos, no smoke on the water. His new music was acoustic: lute, mandolin, violin, medieval and Renaissance melodies, songs carrying the atmosphere of a Middle Ages fair, candlelight and long gowns replacing stage smoke and laser lights. Most importantly, no more guitar god. Blackmore did not stand at the center as a symbol of electric power. He sat down, played softly, provided accompaniment, at times almost hiding behind the vocals. For the rock audience, the reaction was far from gentle. Confusion, disappointment, even anger. Many saw this as a retreat, a sign of decline, proof that a legend had lost his fire. They wanted him back with powerful riffs, dazzling solos, with the past that had made his name. But Blackmore did not try to persuade anyone. He did not organize dense nostalgia tours to keep the heat. He did not return to Deep Purple full-time to satisfy the audience. He did not rebuild Rainbow as a retro machine. Because for him, this was not abandoning the peak. This was returning. Returning to the classical European music he had loved since he was very young. Returning to melodies that told stories rather than competed in speed. Returning to a space where music did not have to prove anything, not to the market, not to the charts, not to the legend of himself. In Blackmore's Night, he did not need to surpass his 1972 version. No need to play faster, no need to play bigger, no need to reassert his status. He only needed to feel right. And that is what makes this decision remarkable. Leaving a band can be strategic. Leaving a style can be experimental. But leaving an entire ecosystem that has celebrated you, to choose a path with less glory, that is a deeply personal choice. For many artists, leaving rock means losing status. For Blackmore, leaving rock was the only way not to betray himself. He did not disappear. He simply chose a smaller hall, a gentler sound, and a world where he did not have to compete with his own legend every night. And perhaps that was the only truly final departure. In the world of rock, there is a very clear path for living legends. Nostalgia tours, playing classic albums from beginning to end, repeating riffs that have been etched into collective memory, trading the past for present applause. Ritchie Blackmore understands that path very well, and he could have followed it completely. He has a legacy large enough, a name strong enough, a reservoir of riffs sufficient to fill stadiums for many more years. But he did not choose that. Blackmore does not organize dense nostalgia tours to exploit the brand. He does not turn each night into a safe journey back to the past. The few times he returns to old material, if any, are always brief, controlled, and never become the primary identity. He refuses to live off his own legend. For many artists, the past is an asset. For Blackmore, the past is something completed. It does not need to be repeated to prove its value. There is a very subtle difference between honoring a legacy and consuming a legacy. Blackmore has always seemed wary of that boundary. He does not want to become a preserved version of himself, someone who reenacts 1972 every night so the audience can relive old emotions. Because doing so would mean competing with himself, competing with the perfect recording, competing with collective memory that has been mythologized, competing with the image of a younger, fiercer Blackmore untouched by time. He does not enter that race. His philosophy, if examined closely, is very simple. Fewer audiences if necessary, less glory if necessary, but to play the music that brings him peace. That peace does not come from charts, not from being called a guitar god. It comes from not having to prove anything further, not having to repeat in order to maintain status, not having to live in constant comparison between past and present. For Blackmore, victory is not staying at the top the longest. Victory is not allowing the very peak to consume him. In an industry where so many artists are trapped between expectation and nostalgia, he chooses to step out of that loop, not out of insecurity, but because he sees no need to prove what was already proven decades ago. And perhaps the rarest thing in this story is not Blackmore's talent, but the courage not to live off it. So in the end, what truly happened to Ritchie Blackmore? He did not disappear because of failure. He was not replaced. He was not forgotten. He left Deep Purple. He left Rainbow. And ultimately, he left rock altogether. Not because he no longer had the talent to remain, but because he did not want to become a museum of himself. In a world where the past can be packaged into nostalgia tours, where every legendary riff can be recycled endlessly, Blackmore saw what many artists do not dare to confront. If you remain too long within a single image, you gradually become the curator of your own memory. He understood that, for some artists, lasting the longest does not mean standing on stage the longest. It means not betraying the person within. Blackmore's victory was not loud. There was no great comeback moment, no Hollywood-style climax. It unfolded quietly through each decision to change direction, each refusal to repeat the old formula, each step away from the big lights in search of a smaller but truer space. A guitar legend, a silent decision, a victory that needed no audience to witness it. And perhaps that is the hardest thing of all. Not creating a legend, but knowing when to step out of it before it consumes you. If you love the real stories behind music icons, follow Icons and Legacies to continue exploring those who chose peace over legend.